I said yes because I thought I could handle it. 3 days without light, without sound, without time, just a simple research study on sensory deprivation. I wasn't afraid. I was fascinated. They told me I'd be alone, but monitored, that I could stop at any moment, that it would be safe. But silence isn't safe. It starts as emptiness, like standing in a clean room. But the longer you stay, the more it presses in. It has weight, it has shape, it has memory. You don't hear things in the silence, you remember them, and then you start hearing what you forgot. I'm telling this now because I need to, because I think the door was never supposed to open, and maybe it didn't. Maybe I'm still in there. Maybe this voice you're hearing is just another echo, another part of the room. And if that's true, then the room learned to speak. They were looking for students with a background in psychology, or at least an interest in cognitive science. That was me. I was 22, sharp, eager, and convinced I could endure what others couldn't. When I saw the flyer pinned on the corkboard outside the lab, volunteers needed controlled isolation study 3 days. I thought it sounded fascinating. The words voluntary confinement didn't scare me. They intrigued me. A perfect opportunity to test my limits and prove something, even if I wasn't sure what. Dr. Keane greeted me with a firm handshake and a clipboard full of releases and waivers. He wore the kind of lab coat that made everything he said feel official. 72 hours, he repeated. No external stimuli, no clocks, no sound, no contact. You'll be safe, just alone, entirely alone. I nodded. I was more than ready. The facility was buried 2 floors beneath the psych building. No windows. The walls were concrete, institutional grey, and smelled faintly of antiseptic and paper. I passed through 2 locked doors before we reached the chamber. They called it the quiet room. Inside, it looked more like a padded cell than a research environment. The walls were covered in thick foam panels, pale and seamless, like skin stretched too tight. There was a thin metal-framed bed bolted to the floor and a folded blanket, hospital-issued. A single camera lens stared down from the upper corner, red light off. "We'll be watching," Keane said, "but you won't see us. If it gets too intense, press the button by the door. But try not to. Try to stay inside the silence." I laughed then. Nervous maybe, but still confident. I stepped inside. The door closed. It locked with a mechanical hiss, sealing me in. The first hour was easy. I paced, sat, lay down, stood again. No clocks, so I counted seconds, maybe 1,000. I tried to slow my breathing to match the rhythm of my thoughts. There was something oddly calming about the absence of everything. No beeping, no footsteps in the hallway, no hum of fluorescent lights. Just me. I began testing the boundaries, clapping once, hard. The sound disappeared almost instantly, swallowed by the padded walls. I whistled. Nothing. I snapped my fingers close to my ears, and still nothing echoed. It was like I had been buried in snow. The air was dry and tasted like dust and foam. My skin prickled, but still I felt in control. I told myself I'd document everything in memory, build a paper around it. The psychological effects of uninterrupted stillness, maybe. I imagined delivering it at conferences, thought about publishing. I even gave my imaginary paper a title: Perceptual Collapse in Controlled Isolation. It sounded brilliant. I imagined applause. Eventually, I lay on the bed and tried to sleep. But it was too soon and too bright. The light in the ceiling didn't change. It was steady, colorless, directionless. My sense of time began to melt a little. I thought I'd been inside for maybe 3 hours, maybe 4. My stomach didn't feel hungry yet, and I hadn't needed to use the toilet in the corner. I told myself I'd sleep when I needed to. I started talking out loud, softly, just to break the silence. I recited old poems, lines from textbooks, names of childhood friends. Then I made lists, US presidents, my past addresses, types of fish. It wasn't boredom. Not yet. It was just adjustment. The foam walls had tiny creases if I stared long enough. I traced them with my eyes, letting them form patterns. I blinked slowly, tried breathing in sync with my heartbeat. For a moment, I felt like I was floating in the middle of the room, detached from the floor, like gravity itself had softened. It was pleasant, strange. And then I closed my eyes for a moment, and when I opened them, the room felt closer. The walls didn't move, but they felt like they did. As if the room inhaled slightly each time I did, subtly shrinking and expanding in rhythm with my chest. I tried to convince myself it was nothing more than perception, adjusting to stillness, but it clung to me like static. The room wasn't just quiet, it was pressing in. With no external sound, my body turned against me. I could hear everything. The pulse behind my eyes, the wet click of each blink, my breath dragging in and out like sandpaper. I swallowed, and it thundered through my skull. It didn't stop. Nothing stopped. And I couldn't cover my ears because the sound wasn't coming from outside. I tried to speak to drown it out, just to put a human voice back in the air. My name is Daniel. I am in a test. I will be fine. Over and over. Sometimes I changed the tone. Sometimes I laughed in the middle of it, just to see how it would sound. But my own voice came back unfamiliar, as if I was mimicking someone else. Time blurred quickly. I counted for hours, sequences of 60, 100, 1,000, but always lost track somewhere in the middle. I'd restart and lose it again. Then I stopped bothering. It didn't help. My body no longer recognized hunger or fatigue. I was neither tired nor alert, just suspended. At one point, I pressed my ear to the wall, hoping, maybe even needing, to hear something beyond it. A machine hum, a whisper, footsteps, and I think I did. Very faint, like shoes scuffing a distant floor. They paused, then moved, then paused again. I backed away quickly and stared at the foam, expecting something to knock back. The light didn't flicker, but I kept thinking it had. I looked up, blinking hard. No shadows, no movement, just that flat, colorless glow from nowhere and everywhere. I thought about standing directly beneath it to test whether my body would cast a shadow. But I didn't. I didn't want to see what might be beside me. Later, lying back on the bed, I reached under the mattress, absent-mindedly, like a child looking for lost toys, and my fingers touched paper. I froze. Slowly, I pulled it out. A folded slip, small, yellowed, no markings on the outside. My hands trembled as I opened it. There was a single sentence written in faint pencil. "You are being watched." My throat locked. I looked toward the camera in the corner. Still dark, still unblinking. I waited. 10 seconds. 20. Nothing. Then I looked back down, but the note was gone. My hands were empty. I checked under the bed again, all over the floor, even in my shirt pocket. Nothing. Had I dreamed it? Was it real? Did I bring that with me? Or was it always part of the test? The thought clung to my spine like cold breath. I started whispering after that, talking low, as if someone might overhear me even though I was alone. I recited names again, my professors, my mother, my own. I repeated the phrase, "This is not a punishment, this is not a punishment," until the words felt like chewing on cloth. There was a moment, I swear, when the entire left side of the room darkened. Not like a flicker, more like a shadow moved in front of the light. A shape, human in size. I didn't see it exactly, just the absence it left. I stood frozen, eyes wide, too afraid to blink, and then I ran, full speed, toward that side of the room, lungs tight, arms out, trying to reach something. But I tripped, hard. Nothing was there. I hit the padded floor shoulder first and slid awkwardly. When I looked back up, the wall was still blank. White, seamless, silent. I lay there for a while, staring, waiting for the shadow to return, but it didn't. Still, I don't think I imagined it. I tried to say my name aloud again, but it caught in my throat. Daniel, I thought, but it didn't sound right. Not anymore. I said it once, twice, slowly. It rang hollow, like a word I'd learned in another language and forgotten the meaning of. I tried to pair it with memories, but those were dimming too. My dorm room, a roommate's voice, my mother's face, all of it slipping behind a curtain I couldn't open. The body I inhabited felt familiar, but not mine. My arms moved when I asked them to, but I watched them from a distance. My legs walked, but each step felt rehearsed, like I was imitating the act of being human. I poked at my skin as if it were rubber. I whispered, "This is me, this is real," over and over, clinging to something that once was certain. Was the test over already? Had I passed it? Had they forgotten me? The silence didn't answer. The door didn't open. The camera didn't blink. I began to wonder if I'd hallucinated the start of the experiment too. Maybe there had never been a study. Maybe the world outside had stopped existing when the door closed. One wall had a faint discoloration. At first I thought it was a trick of the light, a shadow cast by nothing, but it returned each time I looked. A stain, brownish, low to the ground. Each day, or what I guessed to be a day, it seemed to grow, just slightly, just enough to unsettle me. I ran my fingers over it and felt nothing strange, but it still looked different, like it was watching me, or remembering me. Sleep became a failed experiment. I tried. I laid flat, closed my eyes, breathed slowly. But each time, I drifted into a place that felt more awake than being awake. I dreamt I was standing in the same room facing myself. I'd blink in the dream and open my eyes into the same position. Sometimes I dreamed I was back at school, in front of a panel of professors. They asked me questions about the test, but I couldn't understand the words. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. I screamed once just to see if it made a difference. The sound came out wrong, too thin, too sharp. It didn't echo. It just fell dead around me. Later, I noticed something far worse. I stood in the middle of the room and saw my own shadow, only it didn't match. My arms were at my sides, but the shadow's hand moved. It twitched slightly. I froze, breath caught halfway in. The figure mimicked me almost perfectly. Almost. A fraction too slow. I lifted my right hand. It lifted its left. I smiled. It didn't. I backed away, heart thudding so loud I thought it might burst through my ribs. I didn't look at the shadow again for a long time, but I felt it. I felt it staring from the wall, waiting. More time passed. Maybe a day, maybe a week. I no longer knew what hours were. The shape on the wall had grown again. It looked wet now, like something was seeping through from the other side. I pressed my ear to it and heard nothing, but I kept listening. I imagined conversations with myself. I asked questions, waited for answers. Sometimes I laughed, sometimes I wept. I remembered a girl I once kissed and couldn't recall her name. I remembered eating cake at my birthday and wondered if birthdays were still real. Everything blurred. Everything folded into the walls. Eventually, I stopped saying my name. It no longer mattered. The mantra changed. This is a place. I am inside it. I was not always here. I think. I held that sentence like a string keeping me from vanishing entirely, but it frayed. The string wore thin, and in the stillness, in the blur of my own reflection, I knew what I was, but not who I was. And then, not even that. It started as a breath behind the wall. Not a noise exactly, more like the memory of sound, something soft and deliberate sliding through the foam. I pressed my ear to it again, knowing I'd hear nothing but needing to try. That's when I heard it. A voice, delicate and dry like paper sliding across skin. It said, "Jonah." I didn't react at first. That wasn't my name. At least, I didn't think so. But when you've stopped saying your own for long enough, any name feels like it could belong to you. "Jonah," it said again, closer this time. like it had moved inside the wall, like it had found a way in. I whispered back, cautiously, "Who are you?" The silence after was long. I thought I imagined the whole thing. But then the voice replied, "You've been here before." It wasn't threatening, not exactly, but not warm either. Each word came with weight, as if it had traveled far to reach me. "They always send the same kind," it said. "Hungry minds, eager hearts, empty shells." I sat against the wall, knees pulled to my chest. My breath was tight and shallow. "Is this still part of the test?" I asked. My voice cracked halfway through the sentence. The voice sighed. "You think they care enough to test you?" I began to respond, but stopped. I had the strange, nauseating feeling that the words hadn't come from behind the wall at all, that they had bloomed inside my skull, fully formed. A foreign thought spoken in my own tone. I held my breath, trying to isolate the sound. But the silence was so total that it magnified everything, every twitch of muscle, every microscopic shift in balance. And then the room exhaled. I don't know how else to explain it. The walls didn't move, but I felt them do it. The air shifted as though something massive had drawn in breath beside me. It wasn't temperature, it wasn't sound. It was presence. It mirrored me. Each inhale I took was echoed by something larger, deeper. It wasn't just watching anymore. It was synchronizing. "Is this about schizophrenia?" I muttered. "Hallucination? Dissociation? Is this what they wanted?" My voice barely reached my own ears. "Is this what they do here?" The voice chuckled, a dry, humorless scrape. "Do you think they ever took notes?" I pressed my forehead to the floor. It felt too soft, like the walls were melting under me. "I'm a researcher," I said, like a desperate prayer. "I came to help." But the words didn't sound true anymore. "No," the voice said gently, "you came back." The worst part was how natural it began to feel, talking to it, listening, like slipping into an old role I'd forgotten. I couldn't be sure the words weren't mine. They echoed too cleanly inside me. There was no way to trace where they started. I began scratching the floor with my nails, long, shallow lines. Symbols maybe, shapes, anything to make a mark, anything to remember I existed. Sometimes the voice blamed me. It accused me of letting someone die. It said I had failed a trial. Other times it consoled, told me I was close to understanding. "They don't open the door because they need to see what you'll become," it said. "You're not a patient, you're a mirror." And I couldn't argue with that. I hadn't seen myself in days, maybe weeks. I tried to remember what my face looked like. It felt like an old photograph I'd only seen once. Then one evening, or what I imagined to be evening, the voice whispered something that sent ice through my spine. "If they let you out, would you even know it?" The question crawled under my skin and nested there. What if I had been released? What if this room wasn't real anymore? What if I was walking freely and just couldn't tell the difference? I turned toward the wall, nails bloodied, heart pacing like a warning drum. I didn't answer the question. I didn't want to know. I opened my eyes and the door was there, plain, metal, solid, exactly as I remembered it from the first day. Only this time, something was wrong. There was no handle, no button, just a flat surface sealed perfectly into the wall, as if it had never meant to open from this side. I stood and approached it, hands trembling. I pressed my palm to the center, then pushed. Nothing. I knocked. Once, twice, louder. The sound died instantly in the foam. There was no echo, no response. I waited, standing in front of it for what felt like hours, expecting it to vanish again, like the note had, like the voice might. But it stayed. I stared at the seams, ran my fingers along the frame. I told myself this was hope. I told myself this was progress. When I woke next, the door was gone. It wasn't replaced by a wall, it had simply ceased to exist. The space where it had been was now flush, seamless, as if it had never been there at all. I touched the spot. My skin didn't believe it, but my eyes told the truth. I couldn't breathe. My chest tightened in a way that felt like drowning. I backed away, sat down, stared at that section of wall like it might blink. The architecture itself betrayed me. Later, searching the room obsessively, I reached under the mattress again, not out of curiosity but desperation. My fingers brushed against paper, real, rough. I pulled it free. It was a manila folder, thin, labeled in red ink, Patient 113. Persistent delusional episodes, claims to be a researcher. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of typewritten text. Clinical, cold, sterile. It described my intake, my condition, my initial refusal to accept the nature of his confinement. It said, I had once been found standing for hours, talking to no one, that I'd become fixated on the idea of being a volunteer, that I repeated phrases like a script. I read it 5 times. By the 6th, I began to scream. I tore the folder to shreds, pulled the mattress off the frame, kicked the bed until the legs rattled. I clawed at the walls, yelling for Keen, for anyone. My voice was raw, my hands torn and aching. Still, no one came. The silence stayed intact. I turned to the camera. It hadn't moved, not once. No red light, no blink, just a black lens frozen in a corner of the ceiling, like an eye that had been blind all along. Is anyone watching? I shouted. Am I even here? I picked up the mattress and slammed it against the wall, over and over until my arms gave out. I sank to the floor, breathless, pressed my face to the foam and whispered, please. Then something changed. I stood. I walked. I don't remember making the decision to leave, but suddenly I was in a hallway, white, narrow, lined with doors that didn't have numbers. The light above flickered. The air was still. I moved forward, touched the walls, felt the static in my fingertips. I passed another door, then another. I turned a corner, and I was back in the room. Same bed, same stain on the wall, same silence. Had I left at all? I couldn't trust my body anymore, or the walls, or the doors. I curled in the corner and began to hum, trying to anchor myself. I tapped my fingers against the floor in sets of 3. I repeated a name I no longer believed belonged to me. Then I saw him. In the far corner, just past the edge of my peripheral vision, someone sat, a figure, hunched, still. I turned slowly. My throat seized. It was me, sitting exactly as I was, head tilted down, hands folded in the lap. I spoke to him, whispered at first, then louder. Hey, I said, are you? But he didn't answer. He didn't move. I stepped forward, but the space between us never shortened. I blinked, and he was gone. Maybe I had always been watching myself. Maybe there was never a door. Maybe this isn't a room. Maybe it's just my mind folding in. It doesn't remember when the room stopped being a room. Time is a word now, nothing else. It had shape once, linear. Now it folds, like skin, like paper. It bends in places that never used to bend. Breathing, still happening, maybe. Eyes open or closed, no difference. Light exists, but it's inside, not from a bulb, from thought, from the humming, a warm glow under the ribs. It flickers sometimes. It doesn't know if the body is its own. Limbs are long, heavy. They creak. There are bones, or the memory of them. It sometimes scratches its arms to see if there's blood. There is. That's something. It talks, not to itself, but for something else. The voice is here now, not behind the wall, not above, inside, nesting in the chest. It doesn't ask questions anymore. It just speaks, through its mouth with its breath. You see, it says, you're almost ready. Ready for what? It doesn't know. It paces the room, sometimes clockwise, sometimes forever. The bed is gone, or maybe never existed. The mattress was teeth, it knows this now. The floor pulses, the walls observe, the ceiling waits, eyes, everywhere, not cameras, not researchers, not men in coats, but watchers. Eyes that do not blink, do not sleep. Eyes that hunger, it feels them, behind the foam, beneath the seams, in the silence, watching, judging, feeding. It begins to think this is a test after all, but not the kind with charts. This is a filtration, a sorting, a proving ground. Others were here. It knows. It feels their breath still trapped in the padding. It tastes their panic in the air. It wasn't chosen because it was strong. It was chosen because no one would notice it missing. No one would file a report. No one would knock on the door and ask if it was okay. It is perfect for this. It begins to write again, not with tools, with fingers, nails, teeth. The wall accepts the offering. It writes names it can't pronounce, words that taste like metal, drawings of circles that lead nowhere. Then it finds a word already waiting. End, not on the wall, but on the inside of its left forearm, carved shallow, shaky, still pink, fresh. It doesn't remember doing it, but it remembers watching it happen. It stares at the word for a long time. End. End of what? The room, the experiment, the self. It doesn't know. It laughs. It cries. It makes sounds that have no names. Sometimes they sound like music, sometimes like alarms. No one comes. No one ever comes. It curls into the corner again. That corner, the favorite one, the softest, the safest. It imagines what it used to be. A student, a man, a name, Daniel. That was the name once. It doesn't fit anymore. Too human, too hopeful. It doesn't use I anymore, doesn't feel right. It is not a person, it is a result. It is a specimen. It is silence, given form. The voice agrees. You've become what they needed. Needed. It asks, but it doesn't speak aloud. The question floats in the air, dissolves, the watchers stir. The room breathes again, so does it. Inhale, exhale, still here, still here. It lays on the floor, eyes open or closed, no difference. The silence is gone now, truly gone. The air hums with static and memory and warning. Everything it was has leaked into the walls. Everything it is has become the walls. And what's left? There is no silence anymore. Only me. And I'm not even sure I'm me. They say I got out. Someone opened the door. Or maybe I found my way through it. I'm not sure anymore. There was a hallway, white walls, no shadows. I walked for what felt like hours, and then this place. It's quiet here, but not the same kind. The silence in this room listens. There's a chair, a table, a microphone, a single light above me. No clock, no door. They asked one question when I arrived. Tell us what happened. So I started speaking. Not all at once, just fragments at first. The things I remember, or think I remember. Sometimes it feels like I'm still in the room, like this is just another part of it, another layer of the test, a simulation within the simulation. What if the door never opened? What if the voice just changed its shape? What if I never left, and I've been talking ever since?